Please pause the video and take a moment to read this important safety message. Hey, welcome back everybody. Another fun video here at Blue Glow Electronics today. As you can see here, many of you have probably watched a lot of my videos where I use this Variac on my bench, and it's been a great tool. It's just one of those things where I've been thinking about, hey, it's time for an upgrade, because what I've found is this AC voltmeter, while it's accurate, it's not an easy read. So I end up using a kilowatt over on the other side of my bench. So coming out of this, what I do is I feed out the back of this into a power strip on the other side of my bench over here. And then anything I plug into that power strip is being controlled by this Variac. And then I keep this in the power strip to actually tell me exactly what voltage I've got on it. Same with the current meter over here. Both analog, both work great. Nothing wrong with that. I just thought maybe it was time for a digital upgrade. So let me show you what I'm thinking. Alright, there's a guy around here in North Carolina, and I see him at the Raleigh-based Hamfest. I believe he's from up that way. But I also see him at Charlotte and Shelby and a few of the others around. And he I guess at his day job he has access to a lot of Variac units or whatnot, and a lot of electrical components. And he basically makes these and then brings them to the Hamfest and sells them. Now this one was inside of a case here that is gargantuan. It's an old S823 signal generator cabinet, but it's 20 some inches wide by about 8 inches tall or so. It's way too big to fit on my bench. So anyway, I'm going to adapt this to use it on my bench in here, but that's not what this video is really about. I really just wanted to show you what goes into making one of these, even though I didn't make this. So basically I'm going to reverse engineer it here and show you what all is a part of a bench type Variac. And so this is just a standardized 19-inch rack plate right here. And that's what that big cabinet was a standardized 19-inch unit. But what it's got here, you've got your power feed on the input here. You've got your power on and off switch. You've got a 120 volt power indicator that tells that your power's on, and then you've got a 10 amp fuse here on this unit. You have both a built-in digital voltmeter and current meter on this unit. You've got a set of banana jacks here that are designed to let 0 to 140 volts out on the front here. There's also if you notice that's volts AC, there's also 0 to 140 volts DC, and I'll show you more about that in a minute. He's got just a Christmas tree bulb in here behind this, and I'll show you that in a minute. That is just the output Variac indicator. The more voltage you turn up, the brighter this gets, similar to a dim bulb setup or whatnot. Here's where you take your 140 volt AC out on the front of this unit, and then ultimately you've got this GE 0 to 140 volts out, and it's a 7.5 amp Variac, which is fairly heavy duty. The one I've got in there now I think is about 2.5 amps. But let me flip this over and show you the back of it. Alright, here we go. And the guy's nice enough to provide a schematic along with each unit that he makes. And I've seen him use them, make them in all kinds of different cabinets. Matter of fact, I bought 4 or 5 of them now off of him. Mainly not for my own use, but just to have in case friends needed a Variac or whatnot. But I've seen them in everything from signal generator cases to, I've got another one over here that's in some kind of digital camera case. But here's schematic. You got your 120 volts in. You're fusing one leg of this. You're switching both legs of it. You're bringing one leg down and using it all the way across here. This leg you bring across, and you are basically, this is where your power indicator light is that I showed you. Then you're coming across, and what you're doing is you're feeding into a small little 5 volt transformer, and I'll show you that in a minute. So you're tying that across, and you're feeding out of that 5 volt transformer to feed the volt amp meter here, okay? It takes DC to feed it. But if you'll notice, all this is being fed pre-Variac, so no matter what Variac setting you have it on, this is getting fed with its 5 volts it needs. Then you're coming in the top side of this Variac, you're tying in the bottom side down here, and then you got your variable leg coming out here, where this will become your two new power rails. Coming first off of it, you've got that Christmas tree bulb indicator here. Next up, you've got your current tap here, which basically senses the current and feeds it up here for the ammeter. Up next here, then, you have your 140 volt power output switch that's on the front of this unit. Up next, then, you've got this AC out, and then for the final one, it's this DC out, and all he's got in here is a 30 amp diode. Let me show you how all that's wired up. Okay, so you've got this 7.5 amp super heavy duty. You can see here it is a General Electric volt pack here, variable transformer, and it's mounted in really solid here on the face of this unit. You can see your 120 volts out here, the socket. You can see this little Christmas tree bulb indicator here, and it's pretty neat the way that just kind of mounts in there. Up next, you're feeding off of the let's see, this one up here is your AC, and this one down here is your DC, and you can see here he's got it kind of shrink wrapped up, but this is the 30 amp diode that's in here. And he's kind of using this lug and this lug right here as these rails here, common connectivity points here. And then ultimately you've got your voltage feed off of this right here coming from the back of this meter. And then you've got, let's see here, we've got our fuse over here. We've got our power indicator light. We've got our switch, and then we've got our out to the power cord itself. And then the way he's feeding this coming off of the power switch here comes up into a little plug connector, and part of that plug connector comes off, and you can see here he just soldered and shrink wrapped the wires onto this little 5 volt USB. It's nothing more than a USB powered that then feeds down in and feeds this 5 volts here. And all he did with this was use some two-sided Velcro and Velcroed this inside the case. And that's pretty much all there is to this Variac setup. Not super complicated, and it's something you could build yourself. You could leave out components of this, like you could leave out the DC part, you could leave out this indicator bulb here if you wanted. I'm going to make a couple modifications as I mount this in. One, I'm not going to feed the power cord out the front. I'm going to feed it out the back here. So I'm going to find a way to secure the power cord coming off the back, because I really don't want it coming out of the front of my unit when it's mounted on my bench. Okay, I want it coming out the back and going down and plugging into the wall. Similarly, the output jack here, I'm going to leave this one on the front, but I'm going to parallel it with another one and have a jack here that I can basically plug into my power strip, so that I'm feeding out the back of this unit to my power strip and not having a cable come into the front of the unit, if that makes sense. Okay, I thought I'd show you what I ended up doing. So I took the power cord that used to go out through the front here, and I have basically unsoldered it from everywhere, resoldered it back to the exact same places. But then what I did was I tied off of this pole over here with some zip ties, and I'm holding my cord now coming out of the back of this unit. It's not going anywhere. And similarly on the other side here, what I did was I took this green cord, which was about 6 foot of drop cord here, that I'm going to want to plug on the other end of this. I'm going to want to plug in my power strip that I use, and so I needed about 6 feet to get over to that. And I just did a similar thing here and tied off of the other leg here of this with 3 zip ties really strong, and then I just kind of ganged up on this point right here and this point right here, and then I tied all the grounds together here and soldered them and heat shrink them up. So at this point we should be ready to mount this on the bench, because we've got our paralleled to the output here with the green wire, and we've reconnected our input here on the front without going out the front of the unit. And then the last piece that I've made here is basically nothing more than something to rest on the back of the shaft here, so that the weight of this Variac, just because I'm going to mount this on the front here using bolts, the wooden rails of my bench. I didn't want this dropping down or the weight of it, so I just drilled out a hole just slightly larger than this. I'll drop just a little bit of grease in on that. I ended up drilling that out, and then I drilled holes all the way through this, and then because this is really long, I didn't have long enough screws, I countersunk this down about halfway. So I'll end up mounting this on the bench just far enough back here to hold the weight like that. But then as you turn this, we'll have plenty of clearance here for the kind of the end of the connector there to come by easily. But it'll keep the weight off of the frame here itself. So it's nothing more than a support. I could have made this out of a piece of metal. Could have made it out of a piece of Teflon or plastic or whatever. It just happened to be I had some. It's nothing more than there's nothing electrical about this scenario. It's just purely a bushing or bearing here from a weight load standpoint. All right, we've got it mounted up now. Got the wood piece in place to hold the Variac nice and tight. That seems to be working well. We'll turn it all the way down. We'll turn it on. Takes just a second for your volt and current meter to come up here. And as I turn this up, you can see now I got a nice little digital readout here on the bench. You can also see this light varies with the intensity of the voltage here. Let's see what it goes up to. It goes up to 146 volts total out. And by the way, this little draw-on current here is just the windings, the resistance in the windings on the Variac at this point. Yeah, I'm happy with it. The only thing I'm going to look for is a metal enclosure sleeve for 19-inch rack mount that this would slide into. That way it would give me a top to this unit, and then I could potentially put another piece of equipment on top of it. Otherwise, I'm kind of relinquished to keeping that open space right there. So we'll see. Alright, thought you guys might enjoy that and just see what goes into making a bench Variac. I could have put this into a metal enclosure. You know, instead I just decided to mount this 19-inch rack piece right here, really good and solid. It's not going anywhere. You know, but if I find a sleeve that's exactly the width of this, 17.5 inches right here, that would slide into, we'll do that. All right, I'd be totally remiss if I didn't mention a couple safety factors. So along with this Variac on my bench over here, two items that you don't see as part of the setup that are kind of hidden underneath my workbench out of the way because they're not something I interact with on a day-to-day basis. But the first thing in line coming out of the wall that I'm feeding into is an isolation transformer. This is just a small little RCA unit that I picked up a long time ago, and it basically just has one winding on one side, an equal winding on the other, and passes 120 volts through that. But it creates isolation from earth ground, if that makes sense. The second thing I have on the other side of that is a dim bulb setup. So just a small little dim bulb setup with a light bulb in it that is in series with the one leg of the power line, so that if you were to draw a short, this light bulb would light up and carry the load of that current versus you or your heart. If you were to get caught in a short somehow yourself. So it's kind of daisy chained: wall, isolation transformer, dim bulb setup, then Variac setup. So just wanted to mention that. Thanks for watching this, everybody, and I hope you learned something. I always do anytime I dissect something like this.